Now let's talk about string class. We have already run into some usage of string in our previous sessions. But as we also note, Java has no primitive data type that holds a series of characters. So the string class from the Java standard library is used for this purpose. In order to be useful, a variable must be created to reference a string object. And here is how you define it. Use a string to define a variable called number. By the way, this is actually a good example of what you should not do in variable naming. We talked about variable naming conventions. You should make your variable name self-explanatory. It should be self-documenting. When the user sees this variable name, there should be no confusion what it is about. Here, you have a string called number. And this kind of name will apparently cause confusion. Why would the number be a string? Or why would the string be a number, right? So in this case, it's better to call it either something like string social security number or string telephone number. Then you can understand that this, although it's all digital, all 9 or 10 characters are digits, they are actually not a number that can be added or multiplied. So they are better stored as string. This is how you should name your variable instead of using a name called number for a string variable. Notice the S in string is uppercase, and Java is case sensitive. So this uppercase string, the title case string, is different from a lowercase string. By convention, class names should always begin with an uppercase character. Each word in it should begin with an uppercase character, which is called a title case. Primitive variables actually contain the value that they have been assigned, like number equals 25. The value 25 will be stored in the memory location associated with the variable number. But objects like the string are not stored in variable. However, objects are referenced by a variable. Let's use an example to let me draw a picture to demonstrate what it means. So we already talked about computer system. Everything is stored in the memory, right? And the memory, we can think of it as a continuous stack of bytes. So here we have memory 1, 2, 3, 4. All these are bytes, and more dot, and more string, more bytes here. This is the continuous space of memory. When you define a primitive data type like an integer, if I call it number, this number variable pointing to this area, memory space, and in the memory space, you store its value. If you put the number equals 25, you're actually storing this 25 inside this memory cell, that number pointing to. However, when you create an object like a string, you are creating the string somewhere else. Like here, if let's say I'm creating a string called hello. HELLO is stored somewhere here. And this area, of course, has its own address. I'm calling this address ADD address 1, right? When you create a string object variable, let's call it greetings. Oops. This variable, the space, the memory space of this variable does not contain this HELLO, this string itself. Rather, it contains the address of this HELLO. So once you create this memory space, this variable contains the address, memory address of the string object, while the string is stored somewhere else, not directly related with this variable. And in fact, you can think about this a two-step, that Java virtual machine will create this string first, this object first, then creating this variable and assign it the address of the string. And here is a relatively simplified version of this chart. When a variable references an object, it contains the memory address of the object's location. Then it is said that the variable references the object. Like a city name equal to Charleston, a JVM will create a Charleston string somewhere in the memory, and inside the area, the memory space of this string variable city name is the address of Charleston. A string variable can be assigned to a string literal. Strings are actually the only objects that can be created in this way. A variable can be created using a new keyword too. That's another way of creating string. But of course, this way is much easier, right? So this is the way that we are going to use throughout the course. And also, this is the way all the variables are created. This is the way that string value are created using the traditional class operation. This is the method that all other objects must be used when they are created. And string is actually another type or example of objects, right? So you can do it this way for string too. But because string is so popular, it's used so widely, Java, you define that you can have this way of string initialization. Since string is a class, objects that are instances of it have methods. One important method is length. And this is pretty straightforward. It returns the length of the string. So if I have a string value, this expression will give me the length of this value string. The statement runs the length method on the object pointed to by the value variable. And in addition to length, there are more methods of the string class. String objects can use different methods for different manipulations. String objects are immutable, meaning that they cannot be changed. Many of the methods of a string object can create new versions of the object. What does that mean? It means when you operate on string, you are actually not directly change things here or here or here, right? You are actually creating a new copies, a new string with your new manipulation, because string is immutable. Let's check some of the classes here. So this is simple demo where you assign a string literal to greeting and another literal to name, and you combine them, you concatenate them, print it out. Right. There's also string length method where you can use the name length, getting the name, the length of this name, which should be 6. And you get 6 characters. Also note that you can also use this method in place. Instead of using a variable to store the value, you can put it here. Like if I copy this and paste, it will return me the same result. And then string size is actually not being used. String method, the string has more methods, like to uppercase to lowercase. Upper converts everything to up, and lower converts everything to lowercase. And char at give you the character, the char or character at a certain point. So let me run this. And you can see char at 2 is actually V. That's because string index is all 0 based. The first character is actually char at 0. So char at 0 is J, char at 1 is A, char at 2 is V, and so on and so forth. And this occurs to all object referencing in string. All in string index start with 0. You will learn in the future that this 0-based indexing is more prevalent in Java than 1-based indexing. Actually, everything we learn in this course will be 0-based indexing. Every time you want to use an index, being it string or array, it will be starting at 0. The first element will always be 0.